Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Facebook Live interview with the Spine Health Foundation. I'm your host, Erica Anderson, and today I'm joined by Dr. Jacob Harden. He's the Director of Rehab at Orlando Sports Rehab. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Harden.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, we're excited to talk with you. We've been following sort of what you do online for quite some time. You've got quite the impressive following. You've got all kinds of great tips and tricks that you share on a regular basis on your Instagram account. But let's get started by, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background and how you got where you are today?
Yeah. So I am a doctor of chiropractic out of Orlando, Florida. As you said, I run Orlando Sports Rehab. That's my clinic. I graduated from Palmer College of Chiropractic in like late 2014 and went right into practice about 6 months later in private practice with my wife. And I've been in private practice for about 5 years now, and kind of always staying within that sports active population realm. Started doing the social media thing probably back in 2016, and that just took off, and I've ran with it ever since. But from there, have gotten into teaching in the topic of rehabilitation and evidence-based practice because it's something that I'm very passionate about, and probably have a little bit of a different approach than most chiropractors do to care. I kind of integrate strength conditioning in with rehabilitation. And so from there, Orlando Sports Rehab is my second clinic, and we opened that late last year, and we're about a year into it now.
Awesome. Well, you know, it's interesting. Before I worked for the Spine Health Foundation, I wasn't really inside the world of rehab or anything to do with healthcare at all on social media. But as I sort of got more into it, I started to realize, wow, there's some really massive accounts out there. And that's because there are so many millions of people that are in pain, that are trying to get through an injury. And if you're not one of those people, you don't realize how large that community is. So I guess a question would be, you know, what are some of the most common things that people come to you for? What kind of injuries or pains are you seeing most often?
I see a pretty diverse group. Mostly, I would say overuse injuries would be the majority of things I see, but a lot of low back pain, a lot of overuse shoulder injuries, knee injuries. Lately, it's a lot of foot and ankle issues as people are out walking and running more during quarantine. But yeah, that's mostly what I'm seeing. Being that I'm a chiro, I don't get as much of like the post-surgical rehab and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, but being that I'm in kind of that active population sports realm, I am seeing a wide variety of things from, you know, all different body areas.
What made you want to pursue chiropractic medicine? Just curious.
Yeah, I always wanted to be in the medical realm, and I was pre-med at the University of Texas, where I got my undergrad, and decided that wasn't going to be for me. And so when I moved to Florida, I started looking around what was going to be the next step for me. And there's a physical therapy school that's a really good one, actually, but maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours away from me. And then the chiropractic school ended up being just like literally right by my house. And so it ended up being one of these right place, right time things for me. We have a very good scope of practice here in Florida that I can do pretty much anything I want to within reason. And so I saw it as an opportunity to get my foot into the door, to get the scope of practice that I needed to then, you know, practice the way I want to. That's how I've always kind of seen the degree. So yeah, it was kind of between those two for me. And then chiropractic made more sense at the time for me to pursue that.
You know, one of the things that people are deciding in injury, recovery is, do I go see a chiropractor? Do I go see a physical therapist? What's the difference? Can you speak to that at all?
It's less to me about the profession and more so about the professional, the person that you are going to see. The scope of practice is so similar between the two professions now. And, you know, we all have the same body of literature available to us in terms of what is best practices in conservative care. that I feel that we should all be treating very, very similarly.
Okay.
Now, that probably is not often the case. So from the public standpoint, you really need to evaluate the professional that you are going to work with. If you just assume all chiropractors are going to rely purely on manipulation, and then all physical therapists are going to rely purely on exercise, while across a broad stroke, there probably is a much more bias one way or another between those two professions. When you look at someone like myself, you're going to get primarily an active-based care plan that puts the focus on you to help yourself get better, and I act more as a guide in that process. You may go to a PT who relies purely on ultrasound and e-stim, and much more and more passive therapies. And so, you can, if you're going purely off chance and not evaluating the professional, then kind of know what each profession tends to lean towards. But I would recommend evaluate the professional that you're going to work with and not just the profession.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Now, that prevention is key. We all know that, really. But so many people are not, practicing prevention in a smart way. And this is sort of a basic question, but what are some of maybe your top tips for preventative things that people can be doing to protect themselves, especially if they're athletic?
Well, it's not, I don't think there's a lot of nuance to that because it depends on what are you doing in the first place.
Right.
And different people are going to need different things. But if we just take the baseline principle that injury occurs whenever the stress put on the system exceeds the capacity of that system to withstand it. Basically, you can do too much too soon, or you can run yourself into a hole, right? Then in the short term, manage the stresses being applied. Don't, think about what is my body prepared to do, and, stay within a window of that and gradually inch that up over time. And then long-term, improve the capacity of your body, which I would say a well-designed progressive exercise program is the best thing you can do in that regard. Then we also have our recovery factors, our sleep, get your 6 to 8 hours of sleep, get your nutrition in check, get your hydration in check, manage your psychological stress. If we could just get most people to hit those big pillars, we'd be in a very good spot. For those who may already have that in place, it's probably going to look a lot more like proper load management within the exercise program that they already have, and then just continuing to do all the right things. And then, if you get hurt on top of that, then, sometimes just life happens, but you got to just look at what can you control.
When it comes to exercise, we know we're supposed to warm up and cool down. How much time would you say someone should be spending warming up and cooling down? Because I feel like that's sort of a question. It's like, yeah, but nobody really knows how long it should be.
Well, for warming up, I think honestly, it probably shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. It's a lot easier to say how little time you should take versus how much time you should take, because a lot of people will, want to take 30 minutes to warm up, and then it cuts so far into the workout time that now they've actually cut out the quality work that's going to build up their body, and we've reduced the actual training effect that we were after. So if the ultimate goal there is like improve the capacity of our body, then make sure that you're getting enough time in to do that. But general warm-up guidelines would be get your body moving, get your heart rate up, break a light sweat. Now and then practice the movements of the day that you plan to be doing. So that could be something such as just walking, light jog on a treadmill, going on a bike, getting moving. And then if you're in a strength training workout, practicing that first movement of the day and kind of just gradually working your way up in load to whatever the first working set would be. That's actually probably a really fine way to do it. Other people may, and I would say that's the minimalist approach. That's like my most minimalist approach. Other people are going to just feel like they need a little more movement to get themselves feeling good for the day. And so kind of a general warm up and a general movement routine that takes the joints that are going to be involved for that day through some general range of motion. Do that on a 5-minute running clock, set up a 3 to 5 movement routine, run through everything on a 5-minute clock, then move into the rest of that warm up. You probably be pretty good. In terms of cool down, cool downs are not nearly as necessary as they're made to believe. We don't have a lot of good literature showing that cool downs are actually effective in preventing injury or improving performance. You did a workout, now you're not going to do a workout, so you're going to stop, and that's when the recovery process can happen. We don't necessarily need to do more work to start recovery.
How about the stretching aspect?
Well, with stretching, stretching has a very distinct purpose, which would be to improve upon range of motion. So if you are lacking range of motion, then you can certainly do some stretching, but going and doing a workout is not necessarily going to make your muscles stiffer to the point that you're not going to lose range of motion if you don't stretch after a workout. But if you like it and you want to improve, you're actively trying to improve on that, then the cool down would be a perfectly fine place to place something like that.
Okay. Now, one of the things we focus on is sort of the mental aspect of things, like how positive thinking and just those parts of recovery play into it. Do you have any thoughts on how that can help someone recover faster?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to put yourself into a place where you don't catastrophize your injuries. And that we have seen that, catastrophizing injuries and making it out to be a lot worse than it is, and kind of having a negative affect towards injuries can delay that recovery process, increases risk of chronic pain and things like that. So, realizing that your body is resilient and that you can likely even continue to be active and continue to work through things even while recovering from injury is very, I think that's a huge part of just helping people move forward, because with, so often we see somebody have an injury and they just retract from all their meaningful activities. All the things that are important to them, they retract from them, whether that be through, a little bit of like a fear avoidance, afraid of getting hurt again or afraid of inflicting that pain, or they're just been told they shouldn't do those things or something won't heal. But, the more normalcy that you can maintain, the easier it's going to be to push forward. So with that, mindset and understanding that you can do that, and this is a rough patch, but you're going to make it through that rough patch, is wholly important to that.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point about, completely retreating from so many things that, they loved before just because they can't do it exactly the way that they used to. I think that's such a good point. Now I wanted to just ask you, you mentioned that you sort of got into the social media thing in 2016. At what point did you see that was really taking off for you? It's not easy to build up such a large following. So I'm just curious, like, how were you able to tap into that place where people were just so hungry for what you were putting out there?
I was one of the first ones at it within this realm. That helped a lot. I was just like, no secret to that. That helped a lot. So 2016 is whenever it really kind of blew up for me. So I was on there since 2015. So if we back up a little bit, back in 2015, that's when Instagram was still 15-second videos. And I would put up a short clip of me performing an exercise in my office. There was like no sound to it or anything. And I write this caption that I would say you kind of needed a little bit of a background in a little bit of a higher level background to really get what I was saying. So naturally, my audience got centered more around other professionals. In 2016, I kind of switched up the content a bit to probably what people know more of these days, which is, me talking to the camera putting things in layman's terms, really trying to break things down for people, and writing my captions much more towards the general public. And then coupled that with, I was one of the first people doing that, or was at least one of the only people actually talking to the camera at that point. I went, gosh, I think like for the first year and a half I was on the platform, I gained like 6,000 followers, and then gained 4,000 in a month.
Wow.
After, you know, with it right there in like summer 2016. And then it just kind of rolled because I stuck with it, and I started posting. I was going every single day at that point. So we were at like 50,000 by November, 100,000 by January, 300,000 by the next year. And at some point it just kind of becomes a bit of a, you know, a snowball that has its own momentum.
Right. Yeah. It's like you have so many numbers, like, well, they must be awesome, I should follow them.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
That honestly, that there isn't something to that, you know?
Yeah.
And you have more people saying, hey, I love the information this guy puts out, so you should follow him too. And so we get other people tagging people in the comments, and that also helps it grow. So the more people that know you, the more people are going to find you as well. But yeah, I really think I've tried to put out quality content for the past 5 years, and have adhered to a very strong message across that time point. And so it resonates with people.
Now, when you were doing it every day, and even now, do you have some sort of like editorial calendar that you plan, or is it sort of fly by the seat of your pants?
I used to be a lot more structured. I would post up like a series. And so I'd touch on like one topic for 5 straight posts or 5 straight days. And I would plan out, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about this, this, and this. As the account has grown, I've had to shift it, because when you have, 500,000 people following you, you can't just talk about knee pain for a week, or you alienate, 90% of your audience. You have to really be like, okay, here's a short thing here, here's a short thing here, here's a short thing here, to keep everyone engaged, especially with the way algorithms work these days, where if you're not constantly getting someone to like your stuff, then the platform is just going to stop showing them your stuff. So yeah, I don't really have an editorial calendar these days. It's much more me sitting there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon going, what have I not talked about in the past 2 weeks? Okay, we're gonna talk about that, and then putting something up.
Yeah, there's so many things, but then it's like it always comes back around to, in so many different ways you could approach different things. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Harden. We appreciate your expertise and just all the great things you had to say. And thank you so much for all that you do for this community.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time on Facebook Live.